This is Janus Dispatch. Architecture over narrative. Dispatch number 6 in the Neutral Rail series. Strip away the sponsor, Ripple and XRP must stand on 3 pillars of its own: utility, store of value, and collateral. A test of each in today's topic. When the scaffold comes down. When Brad Garlinghouse went on CNBC in late June and conceded that of the $16 trillion his own company cleared last year, almost none had moved through XRP, and when the dollar establishment shipped its neutral stablecoin, OpenUSD, days later on 4 chains that pointedly excluded the XRP Ledger, the scaffolding around the asset began to shake in public. A promoter is scaffolding. From the street, you cannot tell whether it braces a real building or dresses a facade, and you only find out when it comes down. Ripple is XRP's scaffold, and it is coming down the slowest way there is, sold off a few $100 million a month from an escrow that held an estimated 38 billion tokens in mid-2026, down from 55 billion at its 2017 start. This dispatch is not about Ripple, its companion is. This one is about the building. When the scaffold is gone, does XRP stand, and on what? Strip the sponsor away, and the honest question is what kind of thing the asset even is. XRP pays no yield and throws off no cash flow. What it has instead is a claim to be one of 3 kinds of thing at once: a utility, a store of value, and a collateral. Those are its 3 pillars, and without a promoter to prop it, the asset has to stand on them or on nothing. This piece is a test of each, taken on its own terms, with the scaffold assumed already gone. Here is the claim it will defend. XRP stands or falls on 3 pillars, and the honest verdict differs on each. One is real but narrow, one is real but last in line, and one is genuine but contested and new. None of them is a pillar. XRP is the obvious asset to stand on. What follows tests all 3, and names at the close the single condition under which the building simply does not stand. What the asset is. Before the pillars, one fact governs all 3. The only thing XRP has ever monetized is belief, the willingness of others to hold it on the strength of a story about what it might become. That is not an insult. It is the nature of a non-yielding, non-sovereign asset. But it means the asset's whole case rests on being credibly neutral, a thing no single party controls, because a story that a company can rewrite at will is not a store, a bridge, or a collateral anyone builds on. And here is the paradox the asset cannot think its way out of. The very sponsor that promotes XRP is the reason it fails the neutrality test. A bridge or a reserve that one American company can move at will is not neutral, and the more visibly Ripple owns and steers the supply, the less the asset qualifies as the neutral thing all 3 pillars require. So the pillars are not tested against Ripple's presence. They are tested against its absence, which is the only condition under which any of them can bear weight. The scaffold has to be gone for the question even to make sense. Pillar 1. Utility. The first pillar is the oldest claim, XRP, as the working asset of a ledger, the neutral bridge that cross-border value routes through, and the fee that every transaction burns. For years, this was the whole thesis: XRP as the toll booth beneath the traffic, indispensable because settlement had to pass through it. Its strongest form is not toll collection, but topology. Connect every currency to every other one directly, and the corridors grow with the square of the currencies. 100 currencies imply thousands of funded lanes, each trapping idle capital in pre-funded nostro-vostro accounts. Route them through one neutral hub asset instead, and the count collapses toward one connection each. N spokes into a single center rather than n-squared bridges between pairs. That is the real efficiency a bridge asset sells. Not that it moves value, but that it spares the network from funding every pair, and on paper, it is the most serious thing the utility pillar has ever claimed. Strip the sponsor and test it, though, and the pillar has narrowed to a corner. The stablecoin wave took the settlement job, and a dollar stablecoin is itself a hub. Value now moves as dollars, spoke to dollar center to spoke, with no volatile asset needed in the middle. The topological advantage does not require XRP at all, because the dollar can be the hub. OpenUSD, the establishment's own neutral dollar, launched on 4 chains, and the XRP Ledger was not among them. What survives for the utility pillar is one lane a governed dollar cannot enter. The issuerless, unfreezable corridor between parties who will accept no single issuer, sanctioned or non-aligned counterparties for whom a Visa and BlackRock dollar is not an option, because it is still a dollar. It is a claim on U.S. treasuries, which is to say, the very debasement they are trying to escape, dressed in a more efficient wrapper. The wrapper is new. The asset rotting inside it is not. That lane is real, and it is narrow and unproven at any depth. Pillar 1 holds, but on a footing far smaller than the bridge thesis ever imagined. Pillar 2. Store of value. The second pillar is the one the first dispatch of this series was built on, XRP, as a non-dollar, issuerless store. A thing you hold precisely because it is nobody's liability and does not eat the dollar's debasement. This is the pillar a dollar stablecoin structurally cannot contest, because a dollar is exactly what a non-dollar store exists to escape. On this pillar, and only this one, any USD stablecoin is no threat at all. But 2 things keep it from being the refuge it sounds like. The first is pedigree. Gold is scarce by 5,000 years, and central bank bids, Bitcoin by a fixed supply written in code. And neither scarcity answers to anyone. XRP's answers to a company, and it leans on the utility pillar for whatever credibility it has as a store. The second is subtler, because the raw number flatters XRP. Give the escrow its due. The release is capped, most of what unlocks each month relocks, and the net new supply against the standing stock is thin enough that on a pure stock-to-flow ratio, XRP scores better than silver. But that scarcity is administered, not structural, fixed by a corporate release policy that has been rewritten before, rather than by geology or code. A store's scarcity has to sit outside anyone's discretion, and this one sits inside a company's. So XRP can look scarcer than silver on the ratio and still be the weaker store, because managed scarcity is not credible scarcity. Pillar 2 is real, and it is the one the dollar cannot take. It is also the pillar on which XRP stands last in line. Pillar 3. Collateral. The third pillar is the newest and the least discussed. XRP not held and not spent, but put to work as productive capital behind on-chain credit. Be exact about the machinery, because it is thinner than the slogans. The Ledger's native credit stack is in validator voting now. The XLS 65 single asset vault and the XLS 66 lending protocol built on top of it, and it has stalled near 1/5 of the support it needs after months on the ballot. Its loans are uncollateralized, underwritten off-chain. So on its own ledger, XRP funds the vault rather than being posted against the loan. Alongside it, the real-world assets on the chain are real money, past $3 billion this spring on the public RWA dashboard. Freshest demand, least built machinery. But look at what that $3 billion is made of before reading it as XRPs. More than half of it is a single energy token, backed by Latin American producers. The institutional-grade share is tokenized U.S. Treasuries from issuers like Ondo, a few $100 million of it. Those are dollars sitting on the ledger, not credit extended against the coin. The pillar is being built, but most of what is arriving to post as collateral is denominated in something other than XRP. And there is a second place to look, the one where XRP is most actively worked as collateral today, which is not the XRP Ledger at all. Bridged onto Flare as a wrapped token, FXRP, and staked into a liquid form called staked XRP. XRP already backs lending there, and the phase that would matter most, an on-chain insurance pool putting that staked capital to work, underwriting other protocols against exploits and Oracle failure, is announced and imminent rather than live. This is the most developed collateral use the asset has, and it holds at arm's length for two reasons. It is a wrapped, staked derivative on another chain rather than the coin on its own ledger, and the yield that pulls it in is still largely points and emissions subsidy rather than organic premium demand from a cover market that has not opened yet. Real collateral demand exists. It just does not yet clearly belong to XRP itself, unsubsidized. That is the hard question. And it resolves into a single law. On-chain money is credit to whatever backs it, and credit quality decides who wins the deep institutional use. The largest, most profitable credit does not gravitate to a coin that can move 20% in a week. It gravitates to investment-grade balance sheets, and those already have their own venue. It is called Canton, and DTCC, Goldman, BNY Mellon, and Euroclear are tokenizing treasuries and moving cross-border collateral across it now. The serious institutional collateral rail is being built in public, and it is not being built on XRP. So the pillar splits along one line. On one side, the crypto-native collateral, whether native on the XRP Ledger or wrapped and staked onto Flare, is thin, subsidized, or both. On the other, the institutional collateral, the deep and profitable kind, is dollar-denominated and consolidating somewhere else entirely. Whether the pillar ever bears XRP's own weight, unsubsidized, or only hosts other people's collateral beside it, is the open test. Pillar 3 has the demand and the least settled answer. The 10th man speaks. The strongest version of the case now goes to its strongest opponent. 4 counters survive. The first is that the pillars are coupled, and the coupling cuts both ways. On the way down, the store leans on the utility, and if the utility corner collapses, the store deflates with it. But on the way up, a higher, steadier price is exactly what cuts the volatility drag that makes XRP a poor bridge and shrinks the haircut that makes it poor collateral, so a rising store feeds the other two at once. A thesis that models only the downside correlation is half-drawn. The second is that XRP is the first choice on none of the three. Stablecoins own the utility of settlement, gold and Bitcoin own the store, investment-grade balance sheets own the collateral of scale. An asset placed second or third on every pillar may be first on none that pays. The third is that the asset may not need all three. One durable pillar, the issuerless corridor, or the non-dollar store could carry it, and a 3-pillar test may set a bar that only Bitcoin clears. I may be demanding a foundation where a single load-bearing beam would do. The fourth is the sharpest, because it attacks the frame itself. This whole test assumes the scaffold comes down, but Ripple may choose never to leave, holding the supply and the promotion in a permanent, managed sponsorship, in which case the pillars are never made to stand alone. And I have spent an essay stress testing a building under a load that never arrives. These four counters do not refute the thesis. They locate it, whether any pillar bears real weight, and whether the sponsor ever truly steps away to let the test run is contingent and unproven. The contingency is the whole of the building. Does the building stand? Set the three pillars side by side, and the verdict is neither the bulls nor the obituary. The utility pillar holds, on a narrow, unproven corner, a governed dollar cannot enter. The store pillar holds, and is the one the dollar cannot take, but XRP stands on it last in line. The collateral pillar has the freshest demand and the least settled claim on whether the credit runs through the token at all. Three pillars, none of them XRPs, to dominate. And the honest question is whether three narrow footings add up to a building or to a very well-supported gap. So here is the falsification, plain enough to hold me to it. If XRP takes real denominated share on any single pillar, if issuerless corridor volume shows genuine depth, if it captures a measurable share of the flight from a debasing dollar against gold and Bitcoin, or if the first durable, unsubsidized credit is denominated against XRP itself, native or wrapped rather than beside it, then the building stands on that leg, and the pillar was load-bearing after all. If none of the three moves over the next few years, the scaffold was dressing a facade, and this asset was a name and a narrative held up by a sponsor who was always going to leave. The scaffold is coming down, plank by plank, on a schedule none of us set. When it is gone, we will see the building for what it is, standing on one narrow pillar, or two leaning ones, or nothing at all. The companion to this dispatch asks the other half of the question what the sponsor does on the way out. This half asks the harder one. Strip the sponsor entirely, and does anything remain that was ever really the asset's own? That was Janus' dispatch. Sources, charts, and disclosure are in the published post. Next dispatch in the Neutral Rail series turns from the asset to its sponsor. What Ripple does on the way out. Same building, the other side of the scaffold. If this dispatch sharpened your read, subscribe so the next one lands in your inbox. Janus Dispatch is at janusthewatcher.substack.com. The long arguments are in the books. The transition sequence, 2 volumes, 1 thesis, the ground is shifting. Book 1, The Proto-Post-National Age. Book 2, The Frame, available on Amazon, paperback, and Kindle. The dispatches connect, the books carry the weight. Architecture over narrative.